Henry Kissinger once told Foreign Affairs Minister of Chile, Gabriel Valdez, quote, "Nothing important can come from the South. History has never been produced in the South. The axis of history starts in Moscow, goes to Bonn, crosses over to Washington, and then goes to Tokyo. What happens in the South is of no importance." When Valdez responded, "Mr. Kissinger, you know nothing about the South," Kissinger answered, "No, and I don't care." End of quote. Now, last year, Henry Kissinger, the former Secretary of State of the United States, died at the age of 100 years. It was at the same year that the Global South got a new meaning with the expansion of the BRICS group to BRICS Plus. That is the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, plus Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the United Arab Emirates. Argentina was accepted, but the new president opted out. So interestingly, not only that the BRICS alone have surpassed the G7 in terms of GDP, adjusted the purchasing power, and are the most growing economies in the world, but the BRICS Plus has added additional aspects of this constellation of economic powers in the Global South. Because when you have Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates in the BRICS, you will have, together with Russia, the largest exporters of oil and gas and the largest consumers of oil and gas in the world, which is China and India. So together they will form what we cannot call an oil and gas cartel, but these nations will have an energy security and also be able to determine the price of oil and gas, which has been traditionally in the hands of speculators in markets in London and New York and Chicago and elsewhere. Also, this trade might become more and more in the local currencies of these countries, putting a semi-end to the petrodollar, which has dominated since the 1970s. You also have the fact that the Gulf countries like Saudi Arabia and the Emirates together, they have enormous financial power because in the sovereign wealth funds of the Gulf Cooperation Council, we have around $4 trillion of reserves that have traditionally been used in financial markets, real estate, and other investments in Europe, Britain, and the United States. Now, some of that money is finding its way into productive investments, both in those countries like Saudi Arabia, becoming an industrial country with investments in infrastructure, but also investments in China and investments in nations along the Belt and Road Initiative. So this combination of new forces. Now, there are 20 other nations waiting in the queue to join the BRICS nations, including Algeria, another oil and gas producer. But also you have an enormous economic power emerging out of that. We can add to that also the question of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which most of these nations in Eurasia are members of. Last year, also another important event took place, which was the Beijing Third Belt and Road Forum, celebrating 10 years of the achievements with the number of nations joining the initiative had reached 152 nations, and paving the way for the joint cooperation and development in the next 10 years. Most of these 152 nations are in the Global South. Italy, for example, withdrew from the initiative, but 10, 20 more nations have joined it, but mostly from the Global South. While the United States and Europe are still important trade partners of China, ASEAN, that's the Association of the Southeast Asian Nations, has already overtaken the EU's position as China's main trade partner after the United States. The Arab countries will soon also take over the EU role as a major trade partner of China. Africa is rising gradually, but we don't know when it will start to leapfrog in terms of economic development. So we have major shifts in the global economy, nations in the Global South rising and developing, while we have in the EU and the United States, North America, a stagnant economic situation.